It's showtime, showtime, showtime. Let's go, Seattle fans. Where you at? How devoted are you? Time to get loud with your host, Native Seahawks.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Loud and Devoted podcast. My name is Native Seahawk, otherwise known as Aaron Thomas. And here we are, February. Valentine's Day is over. Super Bowl's over. Seahawks got their offensive coordinator. They got a lot of the really good offensive-minded coaches now in the coaching room underneath offensive coordinator Kubiak. So now what? What's next? This is just on NFL.com. This is their operations website to kind of get us a little bit acclimated into what's going to happen next. And here's a really good one that's coming up on February 18th. This is the date that clubs may designate franchise or transition players. And so you'll see a lot of contracts that are guaranteed will go through February 18th. And so as many of the other bloggers out there talked about, and some of the news outlets were talking about Nwosu and Uchenna, if he's going to be re-signed, or if he's going to be continuing on with his contract. Are they going to renegotiate his contract and extend him? That's the big question. John Schneider was talking about the other day how they kicked that idea, that discussion down the road a little bit. So we might see something as we get through this weekend regarding him. And so anybody else that's a pending free agent can be franchised through this date. So I don't think there's going to be, Seattle is very, very limited. They don't normally franchise players, so I don't see that happening. Because again, when you franchise players, the contract goes way up because now it's depending on which position that we're franchising, quarterback, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, etc. You'll take the annual salaries of the top players, and that's what they'll get. So that balloons quite a bit. That's usually designed for players that are having a hard time trying to figure out if they want to stay, and the team is trying to keep them, and that's not happening this year in Seattle, thank God. The big one, though, coming up is February 24th through March 3rd. That's the NFL Scouting Combine. That's normally always in Indianapolis at the Lucas Oil. You'll see John Schneider there. You're going to see, of course, head coach Mike Mack is going to be there. You'll see Pete Carroll there, which is going to be kind of cool. To see him in the stands, scouting out some of the top players, and everybody's trying to find that jewel, right? The guy that nobody else has on their list, so they can maybe try to squirrel him away for later in the draft and try to get some really cool value out of. This is like when I'm talking about Richard Sherman. He didn't go until the 5th round. You're talking about Cam Chancellor. These are the chances that you get to kind of look at the guys, kind of kick the tires, and they're going to be doing all kinds of measurements. They'll figure out again which guys are the quickest, the fastest. That's where a guy like DK Metcalf came out of nowhere. He didn't come out of nowhere, but in terms of his speed, we all knew that he had speed, but he broke records. So did Xavier Worthy last year for the Chiefs. And, you see all kinds of different scuttlebutt on Twitter. Should Seattle trade Metcalf? Should they? What are they going to do about Tyler Lockett? His contract is just gigantic, and how are they going to be able to pay for everybody? What are you going to do about Geno Smith? Are you going to extend him? Are you going to keep him under the same contract? All kinds of questions that we have right now. We've got way more questions than we do answers. We got to hear John Schneider this week, end of last week on 7:10 a.m. Seattle during his John Schneider report that he's going to start doing now every week on Thursdays, so be on the lookout for that. But he was really just talking quite a bit about, he understands there's deficiencies with the team. He gets it. He's trying to figure it out. Him and the scouting team are out there, again, getting ready for the combine. And, he's like, no, I'm going to reaffirm what we've been saying all along. Mike Mack has said this. John Schneider has said this, that Geno Smith is their quarterback, that they're not trying to ship him out. They're not trying to get him out to the Raiders for Pete Carroll. They're not trying to release him. So, if they do draft somebody, it is for the future. If they, they still, of course, got Sam Howell as the backup. And so there's not a whole lot there of wiggle room to figure out what Seattle's going to do with their number one quarterback position. It's more about the future and, year 2, year 3 from now, what's that going to look like? Who's going to be under center at that time? So that's another thing that Schneider said this week. He said some other jewel things that were in there that kind of, lends people to kind of figure out, is he secure in his position? I think a lot of us agree. And again, looking to the other Seahawks bloggers to kind of lean on with that. But I think we all are saying the same thing. This group think is that Schneider's fine. He's not going to go anywhere. He's got the ears and the confidence and ownership that he's not on the hot seat. That, again, it's easy to kind of think that. But as we've seen with a lot of these players, a lot of these teams are trying to figure out, where their general manager is going to come from. And there were several new ones that came in this year that are brand new general managers. We've got an established GM, and you might not like his process or the process that they've created in Seattle, but that's what they go with. And yes, it's been a long time since we were in the playoffs. 2018 or 17 season was the last time we were there. That's the last time that we won a playoff game. And so it's been a long time when a lot of us our patience has run thin, and we want to start over. We want to have brand new, fresh start. But I'll tell you guys, fresh start is not always the great start. You want to have foundational guys. You want to have leadership, people in leadership that have been there. They understand the institution. They understand history. They've had success. And so it's not as easy as just saying, let's turn the whole thing over. Let's get rid of Schneider. Let's get rid of Mike Mack. Let's get rid of all these guys. But I don't think anybody's saying get rid of Mike Mack. But I'm saying, it's easy to say for ownership, to try to, kind of hit the restart button. But it's not that easy once you hit that restart button. And that's the last resort that you want to do in this league. So are you willing to wait 4 more years to get really, really good? Or do you feel like this team is, a year or 2 away from getting really, really good? I'm going to go with the latter. I think the Seahawks are within 2 years of making a deep run in the playoffs the way that things are looking. We look at the Philadelphia Eagles model, and Seattle is kind of in that same canoe. They've been in that same path. The Philadelphia Eagles have done a really good job of revamping their team. They really start with the trenches and work their way out. They were able to get their star quarterback sort of in the second round. That was kind of at the bridge of the future. They had to get him in there sooner. They were able to trade their starting quarterback for more draft capital, for cap space relief, and then really lean on the fact that their quarterback, that it didn't cost them a lot of money, so they were able to dole that out to some free agents. And you start to really see how player development, it's another big key. What I really want to state, that some people are like, who cares about the quarterback's coach? Who cares about the offensive line coach? Well, those key coaching positions matter, because number one, you want to develop your guys, the guys that you're bringing in. And you might even get a free agent that's been in the league for a few years that was a third stringer you saw flashes of brilliance in him, and you were able to attract him in free agency to fit a certain role in your scheme. I'm going to look to like a fullback, for example, or somebody that was maybe a fourth wide receiver in somebody else's scheme could actually be your wide receiver number 2. A tight end that's sort of just on special teams all the time. All of a sudden, he's could fit in as your tight end number 2. So those those tight end position coaches, those offensive line coaches matter. And I believe that with Coach Kubiak now in place, he's got guys that can develop players. And I'm really excited for that piece going forward. I said this last week, I want them to go after another tight ends coach, and I want to think that the guy that we got from the Broncos, and again, Mike Brown, again, nothing against the guy. I'm sure he's a really nice man, but he is not the guy for your tight ends to coaching them. And instead, Seattle went and got another guy that was a former offensive coordinator in this league. And let's see. His name is. It's escaping me. Let's take a look. His name. Seattle went and got, and it's not in here. Let's take a look at what's going on here. Offensive Seahawks new coach. 2025 in February. Oh, goodness. Who did they? Oh, the run game coach. So they haven't even added the run game coach to the website yet. But Justin Alton, that's his name. Justin Alton is the guy that I think is going to be a key hiring that we're going to look back and say back in February, they got Alton as the run game specialist, but he's also had time as tight ends coach, who's going to help said tight ends coach, Mac Brown, who really doesn't have a lot of experience as a tight ends coach. He's been in the league for 6 years as a coach, but not as a tight ends coach. He was more of an offensive assistant the last 4 years, and just last year was his first year as a tight ends coach. Who cares, right? Well, what matters about that is the fact that the tight ends are huge in Kubiak's scheme. They run block, they go out there and they catch explosive passes. You need the tight end in this this zone offense that Kubiak runs. And so getting a guy like Alton does two things. It's going to help Mac Brown transition as the tight ends coach better. It's also going to possibly set it up for the possibility. I've been saying this, you've been hearing on this podcast. I think Seattle's going to need to look for a new offensive coordinator next year. That's superlatives, right? Headline news. Like, what? What are you talking about? Why? Are they going to get rid of Kubiak? I think Kubiak's going to be a head coach next year. I've said that. And I believe that Seattle's going to have employ one of the top 12 defenses in the league next year. That's going to translate into a lot of more possessions for the offense. I think what Kubiak, although he's a safe decision as offensive coordinator, what he's done is he's going to be a very sound offense, and it's going to put Seattle in a position to, again, be a top 12 offense. What does that translate? To me, that translates into a deep run in the playoffs. And you're going to see Seattle make this run next year. And a lot of other teams right now are trying to look for their next offensive coordinator. They've got a lot of guys on the hot seat. They're not going to probably make it. And they're going to be looking for a head coach, There's a lot of guys out there that's head coach right now, but they're on the hot seat, and they're probably not going to make it. So they're going to be looking for a new head coach. That's where Kubiak is probably going to be finally get his chance as a head coach, just like some of his family members have done in the past. He will be a head coach next year. So getting a guy like Alton as the offensive, the run game specialist who's got offensive coordinator experience could be a candidate to take over next year. And that's what I've been saying all along. I know Mike Mack and I know Schneider, they don't want to be in this revolving door every year trying to find a new offensive coordinator. It just takes a lot of time and effort. So getting a guy like Alton now secures, and it doubles down on the fact that you might need one next year. And if not, then you got Kubiak again, and you've got a guy behind him now that's waiting in the wings that could be the next offensive coordinator, which is gigantic when it comes to continuing the movement, continue moving forward. So it's pretty exciting, I think, getting Alton in there. It's not the big splash that I was hoping for. I was really hoping for Periani, like a Brian Periani, who's worked with Kubiak before in Minnesota, who did wonders there. But he's not the guy. So that's okay. We'll see how this works for John Schneider and head coach Mike Mack. That'll do it for me here on this edition of The Loud and Devoted. I will be promoting a little bit more Mariners news and trying to get a little bit better at that and kind of figure out where do they stand in the scheme of things, just because I talk mostly Seahawks. We are still loud. We are still devoted when it comes to our sports teams. Not going to hear too much about the Kraken on this podcast, but I think once they get better, maybe I will. We'll see. All right. My name is Native Seahawk, otherwise known as Aaron Thomas. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and go Hawks. Go Seattle.